The face of the UFC, its longtime president, and he just so happens to be one of the most outspoken voices in the sport. Dana White is just as known to the masses as any of the fighters he oversees within his promotion. And for this video, we wanted to highlight some of his vicious verbal attacks in recent memory. These are the 10 most savage Dana White moments in UFC history. Number 10. Bob Arum. Anyone who knows anything about Dana will be aware of his long-running feud with the legendary boxing promoter Bob Arum. Arum, who was working in the sport as far back as the days of Muhammad Ali, can always be counted on to give a scathing review on the UFC and the work they do. At one point in time, he even described MMA as a home for skinheads and homosexuals. Needless to say, White has always reserved some pretty pointed language for Arum. And when asked about his rival's public statements about his fighters and their value, Dana proceeded to poke fun at Arum, ridiculing him for his public conduct before calling him a piece of shit and exiting the stage.
I have to pay all these kids. How I pay them is not their fucking problem. It's my fucking problem. And this guy wants to go, imagine me saying, oh, I gotta pay Conor McGregor fucking this much money. I could have built a house in Beverly Hills. Shut the fuck up, you fucking scumbag. Pay your fucking fighter what you owe him. That's your job. Bob Arum is a piece of fucking shit. Good night, everybody.
At 89, Bob still clearly has some gas in the tank when it comes to taking on his MMA counterpart, but more and more, it seems as though Dana has been getting the upper hand. Number 9. Oscar de la Hoya. We're going to have to exercise some serious self-control so we don't just make this entire video about Dana's numerous hilarious insults thrown in the direction of boxing's Oscar de la Hoya. Seriously, these two have been going back and forth for years now, with Dana responding with childish glee whenever Oscar's name is brought up, like he is just dying once again to verbally bury him. And when De La Hoya found himself in the headlines for agreeing to a return to the boxing ring to take on the MMA legend Vitor Belfort, you just know that Dana was waiting for the media to ask him for his response. When it came, his answer was simple. With a straight face, not even a smirk, Dana responded that cocaine ain't cheap.
And then finally, last one, I'm a good friend of yours, Oscar de la Hoya, has announced he's coming out of retirement to box again. I just wondered if you had any...
Cocaine isn't cheap. It's expensive. Gotta make money.
The media room were left in an uncomfortable silence, as most of them likely wanted to laugh but didn't. It was an incredibly sharp one-liner only made better by the tension it caused directly after. Number 8. Ariel Helwani. The beef that exists between Dana White and Ariel Helwani can be traced back as far as the veterans reporter's earliest days in the sport. Helwani, who was a shrewd journalist beneath his more kind exterior, was once trying to push Dana to condemn the relevant state athletic commission for their role in allowing Steve Mazzagotti, another enemy of Dana's, to continue to referee, despite his poor reputation for stopping fights too late. White, being the smooth operator that he is, simply told Ariel to shut up, before redirecting the question back at him.
As a result of this and other decisions, is it fair for you to say that Keith Kaiser is doing your state, Nevada, a disservice as commissioner, that he's not doing his job?
Ariel, shut up. You answer that question. Would you say, Ariel, would you say that Keith Kaiser is doing the state of Nevada a disservice by keeping Mazzagotti in there?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there you go.
If there's one thing you can say about the UFC president, it's that he's a master at dealing with persistent journalists, possessing a clear talent for deflecting media pressure. When you attend a UFC press conference, you are well and truly stepping into Dana's house. And as Helwani himself learned on many occasions, Dana White is the man holding all of the power whenever the time comes for him to step up to the mic. Number 7. Andy Wang. The hilarious Ultimate Fighter run of Andy Wang saw him booted from the team of BJ Penn due to his inability to follow instruction, before he then alienated his new team through his inability to understand why he got the boot. When the time came for Wang to eventually leave the show on a loss, he broke down crying in one of the more cringe-worthy tough moments. Dana White, who deals with thousands of fighters every year, knows exactly what it takes to be a success at the highest level. And in his eyes, Andy Wang falls short of that by some distance. Dana, being the savage that he is, had no problem explaining this to him in great detail, making it clear to Wang that he wasn't wasting everyone's time.
You're here, there's one contract. One contract. One of you guys is gonna get it. This is like insane. He's like him and Han and I don't know, but you know, now he's disrespecting Jens. I'm starting to see why BJ was so pissed. I want to kill Andy Wang.
In the end, Andy Wang's MMA career never really took off, as White predicting, once again proving that the UFC president truly has an eye for that type of thing. Still, Wang's position in MMA history has been sealed forever thanks to several hilarious clips that are still widely available online. Number 6. Conor McGregor. Not even the biggest star in the history of the sport is safe from Dana White's anger. When Conor McGregor and a team of his friends attacked the Red Corner team bus ahead of UFC 223, the news story was among the biggest shock of the sporting year. And though Dana has been known to defend or deflect criticism that his fighters come under, in this case, the media response was far too great for him to sit idly by. White took aim at the Irishman, calling the incident one of the most disgraceful things he has ever seen.
And obviously everybody's shaken up when 30 thugs storm these guys are all cutting weight and getting ready for a fight. This is the most disgusting thing that has ever happened in the history of the company.
And though, as you would expect, he later calmed himself down and started to see the dollar sign in his eyes once again, this day in MMA history will be forever known as the one that saw Dana completely turn on his most prized asset. These days, the pair's relationship seems to be pretty good, even if they're clearly always in a power struggle. But for this brief moment in time, it did appear as though Dana and Conor were about to go past the point of no return. Thankfully, money talks, and boy have these two made a lot of it together. Remember, if you're enjoying this video and want to help our channel out, be sure to leave a like to bring Watch MMA to the top of YouTube MMA. Number 5. Tito Ortiz. Just like Oscar De La Hoya before him, we could have very easily made an entire video dedicated to Dana White's constant berating of the former UFC light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz. You all know the story at this point. They were once friends, with serving as Tito's coach, before things turned sour and they eventually became sworn enemies. Things got so bad between these two that they were actually scheduled to contest an exhibition boxing match against each other before Ortiz eventually pulled out. Say what you want about that decision, but in Dana's eyes, he did it out of fear. According to the UFC press, though Ortiz would have a field day with White in an MMA fight, the pair have sparred enough rounds in the boxing gym for Tito to fully understand just how a matchup between them would have played out.
If it was an MMA match, Tito would murder me.
Yeah.
Like, it would be
Definitely.
It would be the most horrific beating you've ever seen in your life. He would double leg me, smash me against the fence.
It'd be like a Khabib smash.
And put his no, it'd be worse than that. Tito would literally put his elbows through my skull, okay? Just so we're clear here.
Yeah.
In a boxing match, I was going to him up and make him look stupid.
At this point, we're not likely ever going to see this fight become a reality, but could you imagine just how hilarious a Dana White versus Tito Ortiz press conference would be? Number 4. Canelo Alvarez. Dana is a self-professed fan of the boxing champion, Canelo Alvarez, despite his ties to some promoters that he is constantly criticizing. And when a picture of him went viral as he was caught watching Canelo's matchup against Caleb Plant during his own strawweight title fight, the media obviously brought it up with him in the post-event press conference. Dana made no attempt to hide the fact that he was watching two fight events at the same time, telling the world that he had $100,000 on Canelo to win by knockout, a bet that thankfully came through.
I bet on Canelo.
How much?
That's why I watched the fight.
How much did you bet?
I bet $100,000 on him to win by knockout.
However, the biggest laugh came when Dana was asked whether or not he had paid for the Canelo pay-per-view, a question that brought a hilariously mute response from White.
Did you pay for it?
Yes.
It's not often Dana is left without the perfect response, so this moment is clearly one for the history books. Number 3. Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold gets a lot of hate, and while he does himself no favors through his arrogance and general attitude, people often forget just how good of a fighter he was during his best years. However, Rockhold's delusions of grandeur once caught the attention of Dana White, as he was asked to give an answer to some recent comments that the former middleweight champion made to the press. His response? Well, he simply told Rockhold that he didn't deserve anything because he just got knocked out.
But get out of here. Listen, I was thinking about this when I talked to some of the media here yesterday. Everybody, there was a lot of guys talking about deserve. Nobody deserves anything. You got to earn it here. You know what I mean? It's like these guys want to sit around. You got Rockhold right now screaming, I deserve this. You just got knocked out in the first round. You don't deserve anything. You got to come back and earn it.
Sometimes Dana can be harsh, but we'd argue that this was a legitimate 10-8 round in his favor. Rockhold has indeed been struggling to find his form in recent years, but you know you're in a rough spot when even your boss is finding your chin. Number 2. Steve Mazzagotti. Steve Mazzagotti is without question Dana's least favorite referee to have ever officiated a UFC contest. Towards the end, things between White and Mazzagotti became incredibly heated. It actually got to the point where Dana was calling him a hazard to fight safety.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to keep this fucking guy around until he seriously hurts somebody. That guy is dangerous. He's dangerous.
And though Mazzagotti had indeed made some terrible decisions inside the octagon, there was a real sense that things were deeply personal between him and Dana. At one point, White actually went on a 9-minute rant about the State Athletic Commission's decision to actually pay him a living wage. Trust us, the whole thing is worth watching. Number 1. Oscar De La Hoya. And finally, what better way to end this video with one final stab at Oscar De La Hoya? The Golden Boy Promotions president has never been afraid to take a shot at Dana and the UFC, at one point criticizing their fighter pay structures when compared to the sport of boxing. White, who laughed off De La Hoya's comments, brought up the meager payments given out to those who fought on Oscar's inaugural Golden Boy MMA event, a number so low that it immediately shut down any chance of a comeback from the former champion boxer.
It's a Golden Boy Promotions fight that this kid put on. There were 9 fights, 18 fighters. The total purses paid for every fight was $36,500. Total. The average purse per fighter is $2,000 on a Golden Boy De La Hoya card. Volkanovski got paid more to wear his UFC Venom kit than Oscar De La Hoya paid the entire fight card. Do you understand what I'm saying? I could go on, but I think we all get the point.
Safe to say, clashes between White and De La Hoya generally tend to go one way, and one way only. And that will just about do it for today's list. Again, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads.